Hello again, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday, the 11th of July. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. This evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 138 of the illegal Russian war of aggression. Then I will run through the brief headlines for you, and then I will introduce our guest for this evening, and we will look together at the events in Srebrenica and the wider Bosnia and Herzegovina. At least 18 people have died and dozens more were injured after a Russian missile attack hit a 5-story apartment building in the town of Chasiv Yar in eastern Ukraine. Emergency workers worked to pull people trapped in the rubble. Rescuers say they were in voice contact with 2 people trapped in the ruins. The strike destroyed 3 buildings in a residential quarter of the town, inhabited mostly by people who work in nearby factories. Sergei Haidai, Ukraine's governor of Luhansk, has said that a small part of Luhansk region is still holding on. Fierce battles are going on, he said. He accused Russian forces of using new recruits from the occupied areas of Ukraine as cannon fodder, who are guaranteed not to survive even the first battle. Russia has claimed in the last 24 hours to have killed more than 500 Ukrainian troops and to have destroyed large amounts of foreign-supplied weaponry and ammunition, including ammunition depots for HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems, M777 howitzers, and the Pion self-propelled guns supplied by the United States to Ukraine. Ukraine has warned residents in the southern Kherson and Zaporizhia to evacuate as it prepares to launch a counter-offensive to retake the area. Kherson and Zaporizhia regions were occupied by Russian troops in late February after they crossed the bridge from Russian-annexed Crimea. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Irina Vereshchuk, said, "It's clear that there will be fighting, there will be artillery shelling, and therefore we urge people to evacuate urgently." Lithuania has expanded restrictions on trade through its territory to Russia's Kaliningrad exclave, as phase-ins on earlier announced European Union sanctions begin. Goods sanctioned from Monday morning include concrete, wood, alcohol, and alcohol-based industrial chemicals. The governor of Kaliningrad, Anton Alekhanov, has proposed a total ban on the movement of goods between the 3 Baltic states and Russia, in response to what authorities in the exclave have called a blockade. The Russian gas giant Gazprom will begin 10 days of routine maintenance on its Nord Stream 1 pipeline today, as Europe waits to see if the gas comes back on. The annual work on the 2 pipelines was scheduled long in advance. However, many fear Gazprom might take the opportunity to simply shut off the valves. And 2 Ukrainian civilians were killed and at least 2 others injured in Russian missile attacks on the town of Siversk, which is near Severodonetsk, officials have said. The Donetsk governor, Pavlo Kyrylenko, said 3 people were hurt by shelling in Solidar and 7 houses and other properties burned down in Bakhmut, with no details of casualties. Ukraine officials warned last week that the city of Luhansk region was facing a humanitarian disaster. 11 Conservatives are now bidding to be the next Prime Minister, as Liz Truss, Raymond Chishti and Penny Mordaunt declared their intention to stand over the weekend. Candidates with fewer than 36 votes are likely to be excluded after the first round. The Conservative Party's new 1922 committee executive is being elected today, but we are still waiting for reports of any rule changes that the new committee introduces. After an acrimonious weekend in which several MPs launched their plans to cut tax, those currently vying to be Prime Minister are likely to be whittled down to a final 2 in about a week. Sources said the 1922 committee may increase the number of supporters a contender needs to 25, clearing an increasingly crowded field and adding a frenetic pace to a nascent campaign already beset by ill-tempered briefings. Sufficient support would enable those to get onto the ballot, in which MPs vote the field down to a final pair. 11 have already thrown their hats into the ring to replace Johnson, with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss and the newly appointed Foreign Office Minister Raymond Chishti becoming the latest when they announced their candidacy on Sunday night. Candidates to become the next Prime Minister have vowed to deny a new independence referendum, saying that there will be no new separation vote for at least another decade. Both Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid said yesterday that while they were not ruling out another referendum forever, there would be no new plebiscite until the 2030s, should they succeed Boris Johnson and enter number 10. A key ally of Penny Mordaunt vowed that the Trade Minister, who launched her leadership bid yesterday, would stop Ms Sturgeon's drive for a new referendum in October next year and the SNP's never-ending push to tear us apart. Meanwhile, Tom Tugendhat condemned Ms Sturgeon's referendum demands as a cheap political play, designed to distract from her failures, he said, in health and education, and he refused to set out the circumstances in which a new referendum could ever happen. A 3-month pause on new visa applications for displaced Ukrainians is to come to Scotland will be in place from 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the 13th of July. The pause on new applications will not affect anyone who has already made an application or who has had their visa granted. A total of 21,256 visas have been issued naming a Scottish sponsor. That's more than 20% of the UK total, and the highest number per head of population in the UK. Scotland is currently providing sanctuary to over 7,000 people, 2/3 of whom applied under the Scottish Super Sponsor Scheme. This exceeds the 3,000 the Scottish Government committed to welcome when the scheme launched in March, to provide a rapid route to safety for those fleeing the crisis caused by Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. An SNP MP's bill to introduce paid leave for parents with baby and neonatal care will be published today. Stuart MacDonald MP formally introduced his private member's bill to the House of Commons last month, with the support of Bliss, the leading charity for premature and sick babies. The bill is due to receive its second reading on Friday the 15th of July and, if ultimately passed, could help thousands of families across Scotland and the UK every year by ensuring all parents of premature and sick babies are entitled to additional paid maternity and paternity leave. For every 7 babies born in the UK, 1 is admitted to neonatal care shortly after birth, meaning thousands of parents are forced to choose between going to work or staying at the hospital with their newborn. Research by Bliss has revealed that 1 in 4 families have had to borrow money during or following their baby's neonatal stay. And the Ness and Its People, an exhibition of finds uncovered at the nearby Ness of Brodgar excavation, opens at Maeshowe from the 11th of July until the 12th of August. Under excavation since 2004, the Ness of Brodgar site is revealing a massive complex of monumental Neolithic structures dating from the centuries around 3000 BC, making it one of the most important archaeological excavations in the world today. Archaeologists and specialists involved in excavating the site are gaining insight into the culture and beliefs of Neolithic Orkney, shining a new light on the prehistory of Northern Europe. Now, the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina have this past weekend marked the 27th anniversary of the massacre at Srebrenica. During July 1995, units of the Bosnian Serb Army of Republika Srpska, under the command of Ratko Mladic, murdered more than 8,000 men and boys. In 2004, in a unanimous ruling, the appeals chamber of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, located in The Hague, ruled that the massacre constituted genocide. The ruling was also upheld by the International Court of Justice in 2007, and in 2013, 2014, and again in 2019, the Dutch state was found liable in the Dutch Supreme Court and in the Hague District Court of failing to do enough to prevent more than 300 of those deaths. So we are very lucky to have as our guest this evening someone who will be able to help us understand the events of 1995, what has happened since, and what may lie in the future. Ćamil Duraković was born in 1979 in Srebrenica. He is one of the surviving victims of the genocide who were killed on the death march to Tuzla. After that, he escaped with his family to the United States, where he graduated from the Faculty of Judicial Administration and Counseling Psychology. In April 2005, he returned to Srebrenica. Until 2008, he worked in the administrative service for the municipality there and as an advisor to the mayor of the municipality for international relations. From 2008, he served as deputy mayor and in March 2012 took over as mayor. In the municipal elections that year, he was elected as the mayor of Srebrenica as an independent candidate, and he held that position until 2016. He is now a member of the municipality of Srebrenica and is the author of the book Srebrenica, A Forgotten Promise. Ćamil, good evening. Thank you for joining us from Srebrenica on Broadcasting Scotland this evening.
Good evening, Andrew.
I would like to look with you at the events that took place in 1995 and their ramifications from three perspectives, really. I'd like to look at the past in order that perhaps we can better understand, then look at the present, and then perhaps consider the future too. Now, some of our younger viewers may not have a very clear picture of the Bosnian War and may not have a very clear picture of the massacre which took place in Srebrenica. So, if it's possible, could you tell us from your perspective about what precipitated that war, and in particular the events that led up to July 1995 around Srebrenica?
Okay, first to understand the broader picture of the situation in 90s in former Yugoslavia, we were living in the Federation of Yugoslavia, which had 6 republics. One of the republics was actually Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the states within the Federation of former Yugoslavia. It is the only republic that was actually multi-ethnic, where 3 ethnic groups lived, actually Bosniaks or Muslims, Serbs and Croats, Croats as Catholics and Serbs are Orthodox. So those are 3 nations living in Bosnia. When Yugoslavia started to dissolve in early 90s, also Bosnia had held a referendum where majority of the people, of the citizens of Bosnia, decided to separate from Yugoslavia. That was the time when Belgrade, official Belgrade as a capital of Yugoslavia, being headed by Milosevic, famous name you probably all heard about this person, they actually invaded, or it's a similar situation. I was listening to you informing about Ukraine and aggression from Russia to Ukraine. It's pretty similar situation where powerful headquarters in Belgrade actually used the national army to invade or attack Bosnia and try to stop the legitimate will of Bosnian people. Unfortunately, Srebrenica is the small town in eastern part of Bosnia, bordering with Serbia. So we were the first one on the hit, if you understand. So we were the first ones that were attacked. This eastern part of Bosnia, we call it Podrinje. It's the region with municipalities on the valley of Drina River that separates Serbia and Bosnia. So that's why at the beginning of war, we were under the attack of Serbian army at the moment. So we were kind of surrounded. All municipalities around Srebrenica were actually taken by Yugoslavian National Army or Serbs army at that time. And Srebrenica gave some, some of the people in Srebrenica, they organized spontaneously to actually fight back. So that's why Srebrenica was the only town in eastern Bosnia to be safe for the people from surrounding area or surrounding municipalities to find a safe place to find a refuge if you want. So Srebrenica was giving let's say resistance to the attack. So many people in that time lived in this small town by 1993. So whole year since the war began in April of 1992, we had like 56,000 people, including domicile from Srebrenica and people from surrounding municipalities living in this small town and resisting to this aggression of Serbian army. And then in 1993, in April, we had the UN general called Philip Morion, who came in a mission to Srebrenica in this region. And actually, that was the time when the whole United Nations proclaimed Srebrenica as a safe zone, UN safe zone, United Nations safe zone, or famously called safe haven. So in 1993, in April, we were actually demilitarized and protected. So the people living here actually felt a peace in the middle of Bosnian war, which ended in 1995. So we started normally reorganizing life. People were starting to live in peace. No shellings, no shootings, no fights, no war, no killings. So even the war was going on in other parts of Bosnia. Srebrenica was safe heaven, as we called it, and we were so relaxed, and we were happy to be safe zone, to be protected by the whole United Nations. We had soldiers of First Canadian Battalion as UN peacekeepers. They came to Srebrenica and they were taking care of security. So as a child in that time, I was 14, and in that time, I started to going to war school. We established, the local civil government established, for first time after the war started, they established a school. So I started going to school. I had a normal, peaceful, let's say, school time, and we never expected what will happen in actually July 1995. As war was going on, and different political influence and negotiations that were being held throughout the world, including Dayton, Paris, France, and other Lisbon and other places in Europe and the whole world, we were actually living in peace. And then all of a sudden, God knows for what reason, all of a sudden July came, and few days before July 11th, some strange gossiping throughout the city started, and I heard from older people that Srebrenica is being under the huge attack from Serbian army, and still we didn't believe that it could even happen, because we were protected by the forces of United Nations. Like, we trusted them that we will be protected. uh, we were somehow relaxed, and didn't expect that we will actually have to run. We would have to run. Just to go back a little bit, when the school was established, my parents, my father, my mother, and my middle brother, actually, they were living in the village called Luka. It's the home village of my father, which is 53 kilometers from downtown Srebrenica. And when Srebrenica became a protected UN protected zone, Luka, as a small village of my father, was actually, it fell under the protection of Žepa. It is the neighboring city, not city, actually, it was the local community called Žepa. There were they established two safe zones. One was Žepa, another one was Srebrenica. So my parents, my brother, and my mother were actually living in that safe area, and I, as a student, actually a pupil, I was going to high school, first grade of high school. So I was living with my grandmother. She cooked for me and she took care of me. And from times to times, my father would come down from the safe area Žepa to Srebrenica to bring me some food, and to see how I'm doing in school, and etc. So the July came, and I didn't have any connection with my parents. Actually, all I had is a connection to my uncle Reuf, who is living across the street. I'm speaking from that house right now, actually. And just across the street, my uncle Reuf and two of his son and his wife and my grandmother actually lived there. So I had to go to my uncle to ask him, what now? What will we do now? I don't know what to decide. I see people going down to Potocari, Dutch battalion's base, and some people are going uptown to go throughout the mountains to safe area of Tuzla. That's what we heard. What that would happen. So now we were clear on July 10th, 1995. We were clear that Srebrenica is falling under the attack of Ratko Mladic's army, or army of Serbian forces. So we had to find a way how to escape. So my uncle took care of me, and he said, "Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about you because your parents are not here. I am going with my sons to the mountains, and we will walk to Tuzla. If you want to go with us, come with us. If you don't, then go down to Potocari, Dutch battalion. I mean UN battalion's base, and just as other civilians went there. So since I was 16 in 1995, I was kind of bigger physically than my generation. So I was afraid if I go down and surrender to Dutch battalion that I will be definitely killed. I don't, maybe it's a broad story, but I have to explain to have a clearer picture what happened. So I decided to go with my
Absolutely.
uncle Reuf and two of his sons. And that was my journey. That was my journey. I was 16, as I told you. My first cousin, my uncle's son, was also 16. His name was Asim, and his older son was Alia. And unfortunately, we started this journey together from a place called Shushnjari from Srebrenica. We started this death march, call it, as we call it today. We have this peace march going to the same path as we went in 1995. So it was a 7 day walk for me. Actually, it wasn't a walk, it was a survival of the fittest. It was every day under the attack of Serb forces, ambushes, captures, and surrendering of people, being exhausted, being hungered to actually physically unable to walk more. But somehow I had this energy in me and something pushed me forward. The second day of my walk, unfortunately, I lost my uncle Reuf and one of his sons and on the second day of walk. So I continued by myself, just meeting with other people that I knew. So I joined a group of people that I knew, and I walked the rest of my journey. The fourth day of my walk, I saw my older cousin Alia, and I asked him like, what happened to uncle? Where's Asim, younger cousin? He said, I don't know. We lost each other on the first ambush, first day, and I don't know what happened to them. He goes, what's up with you? I go like, we just moving forward. What are you gonna do? He goes like, I will keep going with some neighborhoods here, and you just keep going, and let's try push it forward. And since then, I never saw him too. So on the seventh day of that journey, when actually we came finally to the safe area being controlled by Bosnian army, official Bosnian army, I realized that I lost all three of them, and I was lucky. It's just being lucky, and I wasn't even old enough to understand the situation, but I also wasn't young enough not to remember and not to know what's going on. I was like 16. It's teenage age that and then when I realized what happened, and I realized that many of my schoolmates, my cousins, my friends, my people that I knew, that most of them died on that journey. Like 13,000 of us started that journey from Srebrenica, and first 7 day, only 3,500 actually got to the safe area. We had some people getting out months after, days after, and most of them were unfortunately killed, captured, and today we have what we have. And we today had a burial of 50 of those victims, and we still are searching for over like 1,200 still missing in mass graves all over the place. I hope that I gave you a picture what happened in 1995 and my journey, how I survived. And I was rarely a lucky 16-year-old to survive. There's many of my generation was killed. Even today we buried one uh, underage 16-year-old that was killed in 1995.
Janet, thank you very much for that introduction and for sharing a little bit of your story and your background, which has been extremely illuminating and very helpful. Thank you. As you were just saying there, a concerted effort was made to capture all Bosniak men of military age, although in fact those captured included many boys below the age of military service and elderly men several years above that age, who had remained in Srebrenica following the takeover. The operation to
Actually,
capture and detain Bosnian Muslim men was well organized and comprehensive. For example, buses
exactly.
transporting women and children were systematically searched for men. And I was just wondering, why was it, what was the reason for that operation to capture all Bosniak men of military age? What was the thinking behind that? Do you think?
Well, Andrew, after in Hague Tribunal proved the intention of genocide. So separating women and men is an act of genocide. So the intention was clear to clear this area forever from Bosniaks, and that was it. To take the territory, to clear the area, to kill all the men. So the the reproduction of Bosniaks would stop in that way. So that's why the youngest victim male victim was 12 years old. They killed even 12 years old, 12 year olds, and also the oldest one was 93 years old. So that means they killed all physically capable looking boys, capable of carrying anything like 5 kilos. So, and also the elderly man capable of walking. So there was no difference between 15, 16, 17, 18, or 30. So that proves intention, and that is exact argument of a genocide. If anybody wants to know what actually happened, killing boys and elderly men of 90 and over 90, that means it's a genocide. It's a clear picture. That's why actually it was also approved intention in a Hague Tribunal.
Thank you, Ćamil. We'll talk about the commemoration that's just taken place. We'll talk about that in a moment. But as part of the background and the introduction to that, so people understand, I wanted to ask you to perhaps help us to explain or to help us understand what was done to the bodies of the men and the boys who, as we've been discussing, were massacred in July 1995.
As they were massively killed, they were also buried in mass graves. We call them primary mass graves. So in 1995, throughout the month of July and August, all killings and all bodies on surfaces that were kept, like if they shot people in line, and if they were left on the surface, they will come back after, take all bodies, and they will bury them in mass graves, like hundreds. We even found mass graves having like 700 people buried in one. They dig one hole, and they put that, we call it mass graves, and I hope that everybody knows the term of a mass grave. So as they realized that actually mass graves, primary mass graves, are being discovered by satellite pictures, and United States officials released those first pictures, they got scared, and then they went there to the primary places in 1997, digging the bodies out again and hiding them in secondary, tertiary, and etc., many different places. So that's why the process of identification is so complex, because we have bodies that were torn apart and took to many different locations to be hidden. So that's why the process is slow. We're 27 years after, are still searching, we're still burying partial bodies. We find the arms and let's say torsos, and we don't find the legs or heads. So because it was so organizedly hidden, so that's why it tells the broader picture of genocide. Like, to commit genocide, it's not a crime of few people. It takes the whole system: political, civil, army, police, and everybody, engineering, heavy machinery, and everything. So in 1997, we have the information that they were hiding the bodies, and they put them in many different places. So that's how they intended to hide the crime. So hiding the evidence is also an act of genocide. To hide bodies, it's genocide. So that's what they've done. And in 1997, it was peacetime, but they were doing this on the ground throughout the whole territory of today called entity of Republic of Srpska, and they are still existing. Mass graves are still existing, and they still would not admit or uncover places. It will help us to get emotional relief if we just find the bodies of our beloved ones. And I'm still searching for some of my cousins, like 27 years after. So we just need to find those bodies, to bury them on and with dignity, to actually have a place to come and pray for their souls. And when we still don't find the partners on another side, actually to solve this problem that we all have 27 years after the war, and it's really sad. That's what gives us this nervousness about the whole process of reconciliation is stopped because of denial, because of everything that happens today.
Thank you, Ćamil. That's a very helpful insight from you. Thank you. I'm very grateful. I was also because it's important to understand, but it's also because it's a situation that is affecting many people, many more people than were expected at the moment. You were able to seek refuge in the United States for a time. Can you perhaps for a moment remember and maybe share with us your thoughts and fears at that time as you, because of your status as a refugee, as you sought refuge from war and killing?
Yeah, so in 1995, when I came to safe area of Tuzla, now I have to go back a little bit because my oldest brother, Mushan, was heavily wounded in 1993, and when UN came to Srebrenica, he and other heavily wounded people were transferred with the UN helicopters to Tuzla to be treated uh, uh, in hospitals. So when I came there, I reconnected with my brother who left Srebrenica in 1993. So 2 years after, I see my oldest brother Mushan, and so two of us were in Tuzla. My mother, my father, and my middle brother, who were in Luka, as I told you at the beginning, my father and my other brother were captured by Serbian forces, and they were taken to concentration camps in Serbia, in neighboring country. My mother, as a civilian, she was transferred to Zenica. Zenica is another place in Bosnia. It's a different. It's a middle Bosnia, and Tuzla is in this somehow eastern part. So we heard that our mother came to Zenica, but we couldn't visit her because the war was still going on. So I connected with my brother when Dayton Peace Agreement was signed. Actually, my father and my brother, just prior to Dayton, they were as POWs, prisoners of war. They were identified by Red Cross, and they were taken as a POWs to United States. They had a chance to choose. Even some people came to England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany. They could choose as POWs where to go. So my father and my brother, they decided to go to United States. And then they send us, it's called refugee visa to connect. So Bosnia opened the borders for families from Srebrenica in that time to connect with their family members throughout the world. So we got a chance, my mother, my brother, oldest brother, and I, we got a chance to connect with my father and my other brother in the States. So that's what happened actually. End of 1996, we finally, three of us, my mom, my oldest brother, and I, went to the States as refugee, and we all reconnected years after beginning of war. So I lived there since 1996 up to 2005. I went there to my high school. I graduated from university, and somehow it was haunting me. I mean, the whole situation, and I was emotionally connected. I followed efforts of surviving victims here in Bosnia to return to Srebrenica to live here. I followed our heroic mothers fighting for justice. After all, as a student, I followed the political and all other situation in Bosnia, and all of a sudden, I was like thinking, okay, when I get my school, when I get my diplomas and degrees, I will just use that experience, go back and try to work with reforms to become a part of society that needs a lot to fix. So somehow I invested my education, and I was young, pretty young when I came back. I was 25. And I said, I will go there and invest myself to work in the country that needs me. United States is a great country, gave me great opportunity. I had a great education, great job. But I said, yeah, there's many people like me in the States being educated. my country needs me. So that's why I decided to come back. And since then, I came to Srebrenica in April 2005 for the sake of my killed cousins, schoolmates, friends, to actually, because God gave me a life, probably, and a mission to come back and to do this, what I do today, to fight for justice, tell the truth, spread the truth for the sake of those that were killed. So, and somehow my mission, I'm so happy working and doing this as my minimum uh, effort, as minimum that I can give is to spread the truth for the sake of those that actually cannot talk today because they were killed.
Thank you, Ćamil. That's been a very illuminating and very helpful explanation of events and your own personal circumstances, and I'm very grateful to you for that. That brings us up a little bit closer to the present. Now, I remember very well that we covered the commemoration in Srebrenica with a live broadcast on Broadcasting Scotland last year. So before we talk about the detail of the commemoration, I was going to ask you more generally, what has been happening in Srebrenica in the past 12 months?
Well, that's what we are worrying about the most, because somehow we live from July to July. Uh, we, as today's hosts, we are surviving victims. We bury your loved ones, but we also have to be good hosts on the day of July 11 to receive all the guests, to be good hosts, to actually make situations safe for everybody to go back home safely. So what happens tomorrow and days and 365 days after that is our life. So that's when we get the time to somehow consolidate our emotions, to see how we will continue uh, to actually live here and stay here for the sake of those that were actually killed. Most of us are members, family members of those that were killed. What I see is too many political messages on the event of July 11th, promises for that, like justice will be brought, like we will help you economically, and blah blah blah. All those political messages, the moment they leave here, Andrew, it's forgotten. They just leave us on our own, just like we were left in 1995 to actually on our own to take care of our own lives. So that's something that kind of pisses us off, because the whole world once in 1993 promised us that we would be safe, and they betrayed us. Today, they promised us that we will go back to our homes, pre-war homes, and that we would have a life decent of a human being, and they lied again, because we don't. There's still people in poverty. There's still people living on the margins of social existence. They're poor. The houses were destroyed. The whole infrastructure was destroyed. The industrial zones were destroyed. Economy is destroyed. Roads, everything. And now we have to rebuild from nothing, and having this emotional effects on the families, on mothers and everybody. You have mothers that lost like 3, 4, 5 sons. They returned here and they live in villages. No one ever, barely ever visits them to see how they're doing. Do they have, I mean, the life is really, really tough and hard. For me, it's a challenge. Like I have a choice to live anywhere, including going back to the States. I have a citizenship. I can live in Sarajevo or Tuzla or bigger centers of this country. But somehow I feel responsibility for these people that were left again to suffer. After everything we've suffered and lost the lives of our loved ones, we still suffer living a hard life under the system that still denies the crimes, genocide, and everything. We live in this part of Bosnia called Republic of Srpska. The official regime of this part of Bosnia is officially denying us and denying genocide and everything that happens. They do everything to make our lives hard to actually not stay here, just to leave. They're not shooting us, but in a peaceful manner, they're trying to pressure us just not to live here. And I'm telling you this from the first hand because I live here, I have children here. I know I know the system. I know how they do it, and they're pressuring hard just to make what they began in '90s, just to finalize it through peaceful uh, 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 for us to make us peacefully leave and never come back, if you know what I mean.
I do, I understand completely. Thank you for bringing us up to date about the ongoing challenges that the people in the Bosniaks and people in Srebrenica, for example, are continuing to face. I wanted to help people who are watching understand a little bit about the commemoration that takes place in July each year. So, could you, in case these people are not aware of what takes place, could you take a moment, please, and describe what takes place at the commemoration each
Sure,
July?
sure. What happens is, like, throughout the year, the ICMP, International Commission for Missing Persons, and Identification Center in Tuzla, the bones that they find or found in the past, they collect them and they take them to this center, and there's a DNA process of identification. So each year on July 11th, we bury, on a religious way, we bury uh, identified victims throughout the year. If you understand what I'm saying, and we commemorate those that were actually buried before and those that are still not found. So it's a long process that takes a year to identify few people. Like this year, we had only 50. Last year we had 27, 8. Years before we had hundreds. And as we go, as time passes by, there's less and less of identified victims because, as I told you at the beginning, we're still searching for over 1,000 uh, 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 bodies. So each year we come to that point where in July we bury them and we commemorate them, and that's what happens for the past 13 years.
Thank you, Ćamil. That was very helpful. What I think we might do now is move it a little bit on in terms of the time, and think a little bit
Uh-huh.
about the future, because you were describing the annual process of recovering the remains, recovering and identifying the remains of the victims. How long do you think that annual process, is going to continue for?
Nobody knows because each day we call for those that know the places of mass graves to tell us, to give us information so this Institute for Finding Missing Persons can do their job. Unfortunately, we came to the point where no more information. As far all the discovered mass graves were actually information from Serb side that were given to officials of the state, and some of the satellite pictures that could identify mass graves. So at this moment, if we didn't get the whole information for 27 years, I'm pretty worried that some bodies would never be discovered and never be buried. And that is the uh, failure of civilization. If you want, I don't know how to describe people that are not ready to give us information about the dead bodies of our loved ones.
Completely. Thank you, Ćamil. To broaden the perspective for a moment now, uh, as we were discussing at the beginning of the program, there is now a war of aggression being fought in Ukraine. What, in broad terms, is the view of the people of Srebrenica of that war and of its causes?
I was listening to you informing about the Ukrainian war at the beginning, and I was getting goosebumps when you mentioned 2 civilians were killed, 10 civilians was killed, and I was like getting goosebumps because I just somehow I feel those people, and I know that they are being under the Russian aggression, and I know that Putin's policy is similar, like Milosevic's policy, and we could tell that, and I feel so sad and sorry that after Srebrenica, after Bosnian war, that we are like in the 21st century, and it's still happening in Europe, and it's kind of, and the world is not doing enough to stop that. And it's kind of somehow I watch that and I see that same world that was watching us from a side, and trying to like, oh, let's do this and we will try to fix it, and people are being killed every day. So when some international officials, powerful men, on presidents, prime minister of the powerful countries, while they're negotiating, children are being killed. And I was a child during the war in Bosnia, and that's what's pissing us off. We feel for those people, but we know that we cannot do anything to help them. And we know who can, but everything is about negotiation. When people are being killed, negotiations should stop, and just stop the war and then negotiate. Stop killings. Stop, like, we're so sad for people of Ukraine. And I follow the international news every day, and the first thing in the morning when I get up, when I'm having my coffee, first things that I read is things in Ukraine, because I know what those people are going through, because we went through the same thing.
Thank you. That's a great insight. Thank you, Ćamil. In terms of its response to the war in Ukraine, do you think that specifically the United Nations has learned any lessons from the Bosnian War and any lessons from the massacre at Srebrenica?
That's what I was telling. Like, I mean, United Nations are huge system where you have some mechanisms of veto, whatever they call it, and then if one country is against something, then the whole world has to be a victim or a prisoner of one country's will. So the mechanisms in the NATO, in UN, are so tough that one country can block anything. I mean, and that's why we wait for strict and fast decisions of United Nations. They failed in Bosnia, and they're failing in Ukraine, and they need to change something about that. If this is not a lesson, and then I don't know what will be. Where are we going as civilization, as the whole world? I mean, it's not fair. It's not fair for Ukraine. It's not fair for other places in the world where it happens. People are being killed, and it's not fair.
That leads into the next question I was going to ask you, which was broadening out from thinking about the United Nations, broadening out to think. I suspect I know what your answer will be, but I'd like you to talk about it. Do you think that enough is being done more broadly than just the UN to make sure that the lessons from the massacre and from the Bosnian War, to make sure that those lessons are learned in order that it cannot happen again?
If war in Ukraine ended in 7 days, I will believe that. But it's over 100 days now. I mean, and who knows how longer will it go? So that means no. Unfortunately, no. It's not being done enough for this country that is being under the aggression of Russia now. Unfortunately, no. It's over 100 days. And it's really scaring me when I just think about what happens to that people.
Thank you, Ćamil. And I was also going to, because we're lucky enough to have you joining us from Srebrenica this evening, I was also going to talk to you a little bit about the future as well. In terms of what do you think lies in the future for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the opportunities and challenges, firstly, socially or economically?
First of all, I hope that Europe, firstly, and then United States as a friendly country, the West, as we say it famously, that they will realize that this situation in Ukraine is a threat of other parts in the Balkans, especially. I hope that while being asleep, international community for the past 10 years in Bosnia, they were sleeping. They just let Bosnia to be under the influence of Russia and all this happenings that we see now in the Western Balkans. They moved their attention to other parts in the world. Now they're coming back. So that's our chance for the Europe and for the whole world, including our friends Americans, to permanently fix the situation in the Balkans. Bosnia and Herzegovina has to become a member of NATO first and then European Union. If that two things don't happen soon, then I don't see a bright future in the Balkans. If that happens, then we can be safe and secure that this country would get a chance for development. I mean, if they let us suffer as we suffered for the past 27 years, I mean, nothing has moved forward at all besides political conflicts that we see every day in the public, in the media in Bosnia. No consensus about anything, just division of ethnic groups. And we need the world to fix it, because they didn't fix it in 1995 in Srebrenica or Bosnia generally. They have a power to fix it now in peacetime in Bosnia, to make this state uh, a state of all citizens having equal rights. Doesn't matter which religion, which ethnic group, or whatever. We need a normal, modern, democratic state as other models in Europe, like your country, like other countries. We need that model, and people would get along. Trust me. Like, people are not as problematic as politics are. Probably what I see is that politics are enjoying this kind of uh, political conflict. They divide their ethnic tribes or ethnic groups, and they easily control them when they can scare them in any moment, saying, yeah, if you don't vote for us, those others would actually destroy you or kill you or whatever. So we need to break that ethnic division. We need to make a powerful state with the powerful state government, and build a legal system, equal rights for all in all Bosnia, together with two entities and all parts. That is the only hope I see. Everything else would we will just stand in a status quo as we are for the past 15 years minimum.
Thank you, Ćamil. Now, that's an interesting point you make with regard to the EU and to NATO. Now, I know that we've drawn comparisons between Ukraine and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I know that they are not the same place. I'm not suggesting that for a moment.
Yeah.
They're very different countries. However, do you think that the events in Ukraine and thereafter the likely accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO and the likely accession of Ukraine to the EU, do you think that that perhaps opens up channels and perhaps makes it more likely that, as you'd say, that it will be possible for Bosnia and Herzegovina to join NATO and join the EU more quickly than would otherwise have been the case?
Definitely, like most countries in the Western Balkans, except Serbia, that has this specific relationship with Russia, but they also have relationship with the West, and they're trying to keep this relationship. Serbia wants to become a part of European Union, but they are against NATO, and they want to be a little bit with Russia. They have to decide. So Serbia is currently the major problem in the Balkans. All the rest countries, including Bosnia, Montenegro, uh, Macedonia, and Croatia is already there. But what I'm telling you, and Montenegro is too. So everybody around here is going towards NATO except Serbia. So now, when we get Finland and Sweden, and when we get to NATO, and then when we get Ukraine to European Union, then I am pretty sure that European Union nor the NATO would allow anything happening behind their back. And we are behind the back of the eastern part of Europe, and I hope NATO too. So I hope now NATO and European Union have the chance to fix the problems behind their back, and it's Western Balkans. And I'm pretty sure we're going towards that way.
Thank you, Ćamil. And one other question arising from that. It occurs to me that from the perspective in Scotland, or more accurately, from the perspective of the island of Ireland, the EU provided both a role as a guarantor of peace on the island of Ireland and also provided a legal structure, a legal framework that very much allowed peace to be re-established, to allow the civil war to stop. and to allow peace to be established. Do you hope and do you think it's reasonable to hope that the EU might be able to repeat that with respect to nations in the Balkans?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. If it's all in the hands of powers in Europe. Yeah, we know who they are. I mean, everybody knows. Like it's few countries that can fix things. We're too small to be troublemakers. I mean, trouble in Balkans is trouble in Europe, and they all know that. Yugoslavia was big, and Yugoslavia was trouble for Europe, and now we're small. We're just small, and we know who needs to fix it. I mean, they cannot fool us anymore. I mean, we learned something. Yeah.
Completely. Thank you, Ćamil. That's been a very enlightening and a very interesting explanation and description of events since 1995 and a description of the events in the Balkans and in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the moment, because that, I'm afraid, is all that we have time for this evening. In making these
Thank you
programmes,
for.
Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs, and culture. Please help us to continue to make these programmes, to continue to develop the station, and to make new programmes for you. If you would like to support us, then please subscribe or donate to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. You will see that our appeals for financial assistance on Facebook and Twitter have not gone away because the urgent need for your financial support has not gone away. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. You can find us on Twitter at BroadcastScot. Please like and retweet us there. And you can also find us on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland. When you're watching us on YouTube, it would be great if you would like and subscribe to Broadcasting Scotland on that platform. Meanwhile, we will be here again tomorrow evening with the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in and join us again then. And that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 8. So thank you to everyone who has been watching this evening, and a very special thanks to our very special guest, Ćamil Duraković, and thank you to him for telling us his story and the story of Srebrenica. Thank you, Ćamil.
Thank you, Andrew, for calling.
So to finish on a slightly lighter note this evening, on this day in 1978, Archie Gemmill scored against the Netherlands in a group match at the 1978 World Cup. It's a goal which is regularly rated as amongst the greatest goals ever scored at a World Cup. I don't know if I've felt so good since he scored that goal either. Please have a very peaceful evening. Bye bye.